Hey there, Tom from the Run Testers with another first run review. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Saucony Ride 19. Let's have a look. Saucony Ride 19 costs $140. We don't have a UK price at the moment. It weighs 284 grams or 10 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8mm. The Saucony Ride has long been a shoe associated with versatility and comfort, at a price that doesn't break the bank. Over the past few versions, we've seen a series of tweaks and updates to consistently improve the ride, and the 19 is no exception. Various changes have been made across the shoe, with the most noticeable being the modified midsole foam, still PRWRN Plus, but now lighter, softer and more responsive than the foam used in the previous version. Despite that update, we did find that the new version of the shoe weighs slightly more than the previous version. The outsole sees improvements in the forefoot rubber grip, as well as smoother transition due to the added flex grooves. And there's a new engineered mesh upper for improved breathability, as well as a better fit thanks to the stretchy design and additional heel collar cushioning.
So kicking off with fit now, I put the Ride 19 side by side with the Ride 18. I would say that they are pretty similar. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think, Saucony got a lot of good things right with the fit with the Ride 18. I would say particularly around that space up front of the toe box. I would say in terms of the laces, the kind of tongue as well. I think the little change I've probably noticed so far is that maybe there is a little bit more of a forgiving kind of midfoot feel. I think also the padding in the heel collar as well, it definitely is more noticeable. So if you like a kind of well padded heel collar, I would say there's a little bit more on that front on the Ride 19. I've got them both in a UK size 8, the 18 and the 19. I would probably stick to going the same size here in the Ride 19 based on what I'm seeing so far. Doesn't feel like there's anything peculiar in terms of that fit so far. So yeah, I think the main things would be that I think maybe you're getting something a little bit more accommodating in the midfoot, not so locked in compared to the Ride 18, and also definitely there's a bit more noticeable padding in that heel collar as well. So
the fit for me in the Saucony Ride 19, I'm a size 8 in the UK, this is a size 8, it's pretty much spot on. It's a nice bit of space for my big toe. It's not a restrictive shoe in the midfoot and in the forefoot, so there's a nice bit of wiggle room in the forefoot. The midfoot, pretty much spot on for an average width foot. I've got fairly average width feet and it feels great, and there's a little bit of wiggle room in the side as well, so it's definitely a shoe designed for comfort, not like a race shoe where it's really restrictive, and it's a nice level of padding as well. If you've used the Ride 18, the changes in this are minimal when it comes to the fit. It's a very similar feeling upper. The level of cushioning is pretty much the same. The tongue feels the same. So if you've used that shoe, go for the same size because it's pretty much exactly the same. If you haven't, I would stick to your size in the shoe. I'd definitely go for my UK size 8 in the Ride 19. So the Ride is a shoe that we talk about quite a lot on the channel. It's generally a shoe that we think over the past few versions of it has just been a really solid all-round shoe that you can use for lots of different types of running, easy runs, training sessions. It's quite a versatile shoe, and it comes at a pretty solid price for what you get out of it. It's a good value shoe when you can compare it to some of the more expensive options out there, especially things like the Triumph. So the Triumph used to be one of my favourite shoes for easy runs, daily runs, and the last couple of versions I haven't really enjoyed that, and I think the Ride has overtaken the Triumph as a solid all-round option, and it's significantly cheaper than the Triumph. So it's definitely a shoe that we've been big fans of on the channel, so it's always nice to get a new version and see what they've done with it, and I think they've been pretty smart with the Ride line over the past couple of versions, because the Triumph, they made a few changes to that in the Triumph 22, which a lot of people didn't like. I really didn't like those changes, whereas the Ride over the past few versions, they've sort of tweaked bits and pieces of it. They haven't massively overhauled it, and this is no exception. So the first run that I did in this was a 10k today, at my sort of comfortable pace. Picked up the pace on a couple of kilometers, so about 5-minute kilometers, and then sort of picked up the pace a little bit to about 4:40, which is more like my tempo training pace. And what I found about the shoe is that I know that Saucony has made updates across pretty much the whole shoe, the rubber on the outsole, the midsole, the upper, but only a tiny bit. It's like they've tweaked each bit of it just to make it a slight improvement, but it doesn't feel very different. If you're used to running in the Ride 18, you're not going to have a massive surprise from this shoe. What I would say is that It still feels great. I've always been a fan of the Ride. Last few versions, I've been a big fan of the Ride shoe because it rolls nicely. It's got a good balanced midsole in it. It's not too soft. It's not too hard. It's got a nice fluid transition. The Ride 19 is no exception. It's very much the same as that. I think the changes that have been made are minimal, but I would say that there's probably I did notice the slightest of changes in the midsole. It does feel a tiny bit softer for me, but not massively, and I don't know how that will feel over the next few runs that I do in it, but that's the only thing I really noticed difference from the previous version. And I'm glad they've done that because I don't think they needed to change a lot in this shoe. A little bit of energy return, a little bit more comfort is never a bad thing, but you've got to be careful you don't massively overhaul the feel of the shoe, and they haven't. It feels very much the same. You just get a tiny little bit of extra softness in it, or so I got from that run. So yeah, so it feels to me like pretty much the same as what you're getting from the previous version of the shoe. It's still solid, it's still really nice and comfortable, and very much enjoyed it on that run. The outsole, I didn't really notice a massive difference. It's, as I say, most things are pretty much very similar to the previous version. So that's the 18, that's the 19. You can see the actual coverage of those two shoes is different, but the actual thickness of the rubber on it feels very similar. So yeah, it's very happy with it over that first run. Nothing surprising from it, but it does feel like those tweaks have made a very slight improvement to it. So yeah, I think it's a good continuation of the line so far.
So I've done a couple of runs in the Ride 19 so far. The first run, just a few kilometres, running some errands, so very relaxed, kind of easy pace. And then I did a 5-mile run, kind of ranging from my kind of moderate to kind of up-tempo pace. Now, I had a really good experience with the Ride 18, really liked it. I felt like there was hallmarks of the kind of rides of old, maybe not fully, but definitely some characteristics there. I was hoping for more of the same here with the Ride 19. Now, a lot has changed here on paper. You know, we've talked about the midsole has changed, the outsole has changed, and I think those changes do contribute to what I've seen so far in my time with the Ride 19. Talking about that midsole, it's still PRWRN Plus, but it's a different version of it. There's a bit more here in terms of the stack of that foam, but both the heel and the forefoot compared to the Ride 18. And you've got this outsole, which I do think you notice the outsole a lot more in kind of my early running time. And actually, I think that contributes to the good feel that I think you get here in this shoe. I think the first thing I noticed, you definitely kind of sink a little bit more into this midsole, and the foam in general, it does feel a little bit softer. I always felt the Ride 18 was a little bit snappier at the forefoot of the shoe, and I don't think it's lost that here in the Ride 18. I just think it feels a little bit more balanced. I always felt that when you wanted to run a little bit harder in the Ride 18, it was really about you putting the work in and you would get the good rewards. I think with the Ride 18, I think there's a little bit more maybe assistance from that foam, and I think also that outsole and how that sits with the foam as well. There's still a nice bounce, there's still a nice kind of good rocker there as well, and I think you roll through really nicely. I think, as I said, even when you are kind of not kind of hitting harder paces, it wants to carry you forward in a relatively smooth and kind of up tempo way. But absolutely, I felt like it was a shoe, if I wanted to ease off in, I could do that as well. It felt comfortable to do that. It didn't feel like a shoe that was working against me to want to ease off in, and that's really what I think people liked about the Ride. What I've seen so far is I think there's a bit more of a balance between the two things. I think it maybe feels a little bit more comfortable than the Ride 18, which I think there was a little bit more of an emphasis on making sure that it had that kind of more up-tempo, kind of slightly faster edge to it. Now, I still think that what I'm seeing in my kind of first run is that it still has that, but I think the balance between the two things is a little bit more kind of noticeable and a little bit more prominent. I do think the changes in the midsole and particularly with the outsole, which I do, as I said, you do feel that a bit more underneath when you're out running in this shoe, which is great if you're looking or hoping for some extra kind of traction and grip, and it definitely feels like an upgrade from the Ride 18 from that point of view. But I think in terms of what it contributes to the Ride, and what I'm seeing is that it's going to create something that I think still gives you those qualities of the Ride, but I think actually creates something that feels a little bit more comfortable overall, without losing that kind of slightly kind of faster feel that the Ride has been capable of. So it's definitely a very positive experience from the Ride so far. A lot of changes, but actually I think maybe those are good changes on the whole. So some other thoughts on the Saucony Ride 19. Now I always get a little bit worried when a version of a shoe I really liked makes big sweeping changes with the new version. Now what I'm seeing so far suggests that actually those changes are positive ones. And I actually think that probably this is going to be a version of the Ride that a lot more people are going to like and enjoy. I still think it's going to be true to the Ride 18 and in terms of the good work Saucony did with that shoe, but I think if anything it's really going to amp up those qualities and make it an even better experience for the same types of runs. Now it has got a little bit more expensive than the 18. It's gone up £10 in the UK, so it now sits at £140. Still pretty reasonable when you think about what other shoes or, you know, the kind of money you could spend on a daily trainer option that you could use for everything. I think what's more interesting here is that Saucony now has another shoe that sits around or the same price as the Ride 19. It's also coming, and that is the Azura. And the Azura is a bit more of an up-tempo daily trainer, definitely focused at being a kind of Adidas Evo SL shoe for Saucony. But I think that maybe this could be a shoe that could do a lot of those things as well for the same price. So it's whether that's going to be a, you know, this is going to be a better shoe than the Azura over time. I've only kind of got into my testing with the Azura. I think, you know, sticking to the Ride 19 and the experience so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I really like the Ride 18. I actually think the changes will make this a nicer shoe. It does feel like a nicer shoe, particularly for slightly more up-tempo running. So definitely a positive first run in the Saucony Ride 19. This is definitely a shoe that I'm looking forward to spending more time in. It's just that kind of weird one whether, you know, now that Saucony has the Azura, you know, has it made that kind of lineup a little bit more confusing? We'll see whether one is better than the other, whether you should be going for the Ride 19.
Okay, so my early verdict of the Saucony Ride 19. I think, as I said in the run test, I think is a slight update of the previous version. I know there's a lot that's been updated here, but really they're all little tweaks and it's not making a massive difference. So that's a good thing because I don't think they needed to make a lot of changes to the Ride. I think the Ride is a very, very good shoe because it does a lot of things very well. It's very reliable. It's great for beginners because you get a bit of stability, you get a nice bit of comfort, but you also get a nice bit of versatility as well. So it's a good shoe for beginners who maybe are training more and more and they want something that will sort of follow them along their training. It's also a good daily shoe if you just want a workhorse because it's solid, it's comfortable, and as I say, it's a bit more versatile. It's not as versatile as something like the Adidas Evo SL, but it's definitely a shoe that can do a lot more than things like the Brooks Glycerin line and things like that. So after that first run, I'm not surprised by it. I think it is slightly better than the Ride 18 based on that run, just because of that midsole update. I don't think the other updates make a massive difference, to be honest, from that first run. But if you are looking at the shoe and wanting to replace your old Ride 18s, you are going to be pleased with this. You're getting more of the same, but slightly better from what I can sense off of that first run. So I'm looking forward to running in it more, and I think it's going to be continue to be one of the most solid all-round daily shoes that you can get for the price. That's it from us on this first run of the Saucony Ride 19. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that little bell. And if you're going to catch us ready for our podcast, which comes out about once a month at the moment. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.